Hi everyone, let me quickly show you how we can orchestrate the execution of automated test cases on Orchestrator. Now to do that, let me switch to Studio Pro, our most advanced IDE for automation here at UiPath. And let me go to my project called the UiBank Web Smoke Tests. Now as you can see, I already prepared some automated test cases in that project. And all these test cases are basically waiting to be executed here on Orchestrator. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to design which of these test cases we want to upload to Orchestrator. To do that, let's select all of them and say, well, set as publishable. Then all these icons turn from a gray icon to a blue icon, and this simply means that whenever we now hit the publish button, all of these test cases are being uploaded to Orchestrator. So let's do that. Let's click on the publish button. Then we just need to define a name of the package. It's called the UiBank Web Smoke Tests in my case. We can also define here version. Let's go for 678, for example. Let's publish that. What we then do is we take the entire project, we pack it into a NuGet package, and we upload it to Orchestrator. Now that's already done, pretty fast. So now let's go to Orchestrator to see what we can do with that package there. So whenever you upload a package to Orchestrator, you find that package in the so-called packages section. So let's search for the one we just uploaded. It was called the UiBank Web Smoke Tests. Here you go. This is the package we just uploaded a few seconds ago. And you can even explore this package by clicking on this button here. You can then see here under the version 678, for example, that we successfully uploaded all the test cases we just created and automated in Studio Pro. So now let's see what we can do with this package. So what we want to do is we want to now take these test cases and create a test set from these test cases part of that package. How do you do that? Well, all you need to do is you need to go to the so-called testing section here in Orchestrator, brand new, introduced by the UiPath test suite. And here you'll find a couple of sections, one for all the test cases that are available on Orchestrator, another one for your test sets, that means sets of one or more test cases, another section for test executions and test schedules. So let's focus first on the so-called test sets section. And here you can see I already prepared 4 test sets for you. One, for example, for my regression test set and one for my smoke test set. So now let's see what it takes to configure such a test set. All we need to do, click on edit here. Then you will see all you need to do in order to define such a test set is you need to give it a name. You can also define here an environment, and that is basically a set of one or more machines you want to make use of to execute all the test cases that are part of that test set. So distributed execution is the keyword here. Next, you can define whether you want to include one or more projects in that test set. I'll go for the one I've just uploaded. I'll click on next. And when we then expand this section a little bit, you can see that here are all the test cases we just created and automated in Studio Pro and uploaded to Orchestrator. And here you can then decide whether you want to include or exclude these test cases in your test set. That's basically it. Just save that. And then we go back to the test set section. And now we have 3 ways to execute a test set here on Orchestrator. The first one is pretty straightforward. We can trigger the execution manually. So all we need to do, we click on execute. We confirm that we really want to execute this test set. What then happens is we create a so-called test execution from the test set we've just selected. That is what you can see here on the right-hand side. As you can see, all these test cases are currently in the status pending. The execution will kick off in a second. Now, in that case, I'll just execute all of these test cases here on my local machine by making use of my local robot. So let me open that so that you see that beautiful piece of software. And as you can see, my robot is very busy at the moment executing all these test cases as part of this test set. And as you can see, some of these test cases already passed. The one called create loan failed. And let's wait until the execution finishes so that you can also see what we can do with these results. Now that's done, execution completed, pretty fast in my point of view. So now let's take a look at the results. For that, let me close here my robot. And let's take a look at one of these test cases that failed, the one here called create loan. So what you can do is you click here on view assertions, and then we will immediately show you why this test case failed. On top of that, we'll also provide a full screen screenshot that you also know where exactly a verification in your automated test case failed. Pretty helpful for debugging purposes. So that's the first way you can execute a certain test set on Orchestrator. You can just do it manually. The second way is you can make use of our so-called test schedules. And here I prepared two test schedules for you. One again for my regression test set and another for my smoke test set. So here you can see I want to execute my regression test set on a weekly basis every Sunday at 8 a.m. Reason for this is simple, because the regression test set usually takes a couple of hours to complete. Now for my smoke test set, I'll take a different route. Here I want to execute that smoke test set on a daily basis at 10 p.m. Now let's see what it takes to configure such a test schedule. All we need to do, we need to select it, click on configure. We need to give it a name. Then we can select a test set we want to have executed as part of that test schedule. Then we need to define a time zone and the frequency of execution. So that means whenever we hit that date and time, this test set as part of that test schedule is being executed fully automatically. So that's the second way of executing test sets on Orchestrator. And the third way, and most likely the most preferred way, is to kick off the execution of test sets on Orchestrator as part of your build process. But this is what we'll cover in another video.